I'm Jared Craig with the Vet Voice podcast on behalf of Veterans for America First. I have the pleasure of speaking with candidate Ericka Redic for United States House of Representatives for the state of Vermont. Can you please share with your voters and all our watchers a little bit about your background and your platform?
I am born and raised Vermonter. I grew up in Milton and graduated from BFA St. Albans. Anybody who knows, go Comets, go Bob Whites, and graduated with my bachelor's degree in accounting from Champlain College. So I've spent much of the last, oh my gosh, what year is it now? 21 years working with small businesses, helping them to achieve their financial goals. So we work with small businesses, individuals, and some mid-sized manufacturing businesses as well. So done a ton of work in the small business sector, helping people succeed. Also celebrated 13 years sober this year. And as many of my viewers or some of your viewers may know, Vermont has one of the highest drug abuse problems in the country. And we actually had the largest increase in overdose deaths and suicides last year. And so for me, one of the reasons why I'm running is because I'm just seeing people who are really suffering from a disease not get the help and support that they need. Here in Vermont, they think enabling people in their drug addiction is how you help people. But after 13 years of sobriety and helping many, many women get and stay sober and other folks, enabling is not what helps people. Consequences are what help people get sober. You have to have that addiction interrupted. And so I'm really running as the only candidate for Congress this year with practical real world experience dealing with the issues that we're dealing with here in Vermont.
Well, what you're talking about is drug and alcohol abuse. That's not something that's specific to any one demographic. From my research, it has hit every family and every socioeconomic breakdown, from our veterans to our factory workers to every age group. And you believe that the last couple of years, you said that that's increased in Vermont. Do you think that represents the increase across the country?
Absolutely. So you just called it. We have seen an increase in overdose deaths and fentanyl poisoning around the country. Vermont just happened to get hit worse than anywhere else. And I think it's attributed to the extreme and severe lockdowns that we had here in this state. I think I've heard something like 25% of our small businesses were lost to this. Our kids are, not even close to proficiency in schools. We see a 2-year, the kids who were in school at the time are now behind 2 years. So this whole thing has just devastated the state of Vermont. And when we see record amounts of fentanyl coming across our southern border, when we see the Biden administration who basically says to anyone around the world, please come to our southern border and just come. Meanwhile, again, record amounts of fentanyl has been seized. Okay, Jared. So that's just what was seized, not what has made it through. Enough fentanyl has been seized this year to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. So I don't know what the plan is. I don't know why you need that much fentanyl if it's enough to kill everybody. But we've got a real problem here, and our administration is not doing anything to solve it.
Well, you're running as a libertarian on this ticket, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's a Republican that's also on this ticket. And could you explain and distinguish your campaign from his campaign, your platform points, your priorities, and the kind of do a compare and contrast with you and your opponent?
Yeah. Well, I'll start out just by saying that my opponent, Liam Madden, who has the R behind his name, he calls himself an independent, but he really is a progressive. He supports universal basic income, Medicare for all. He thinks that you should have to have the government's permission if you want to own a semi-automatic rifle like an AR. Literally, he thinks you should be on a government regulated militia in order to own the most popular self-defense weapon in the
Sure
country.
he's a
Anyway,
Republican? Are you sure he's a Republican?
he is not a Republican, and he admits it. He admits that he's not a Republican, but he denies that he's a progressive, and yet he supports all the progressive ideals. He's been endorsed by, organizations that are all progressive. He says Bernie Sanders is his hero. So, right, like he admits he's not a Republican, and he really presents as a progressive, but he denies it somehow. So we'll get back to Mr. Madden, but the point is he is not even close to a Republican. He pledged he would not caucus with the Republicans either. What he did, Jared, was take advantage of a broken and fractured party here in Vermont. And we have open primaries. So what that means, and no voter registration. So you don't have to register with a party affiliation when you register to vote here in Vermont, no party registration. And then it's open primaries, which means anyone can put themselves on whatever ballot they want. It doesn't matter. And the parties have no control over it. So we actually had record low voter turnout in Vermont this year. And I could go into all of the boondoggles that happened to cause some of that. But we had record low Republican turnout. And so Mr. Madden was able to hijack the Republican primary as a progressive. Now, the fortunate thing for me, Jared, is that I've spent the last several years working across both the aisles, Libertarian and conservative Republican. So I have been working with organizations across the spectrum as long as they are for freedom, personal liberty, constitutional rights, whatever it is. So I started my podcast. It's called Generally Irritable. It's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all of the socials. And it's my effort has been to be a platform and be a place where people who are right of center can share what they're dealing with, talk about the issues and our side of the issues, where we're really silenced by the mainstream media, by the traditional media stations here in Vermont. So that's a little bit of a backdrop for what we're dealing with here. Now, as far as my platform, my big push this year has been all about restoring accountability, transparency, and integrity to Washington. Does that sound like something that we need in DC? Some
Yes,
integrity.
The not so common sense.
Exactly. So my big, and I would love for your viewers and your listeners to check out my website. It's redicforcongress.com. That's REDIC for Congress.com. And check out that homepage. First, you're going to find a debate, the one debate that includes all three candidates, me, Mr. Madden, and Miss Ballant, who is the Democrat endorsed by Bernie and the squad. It's a debate between the three of us. But below that, you're going to see some writing from me about what I believe is important about accountability, transparency, and integrity. So my first year, I'm going to push for term limits. I'm going to push for single issue bills. So no more of these 10,000 page omnibus spending packages where they can just stuff pork into it. We're going to eliminate that. And then a balanced budget initiative. So no more writing $2.8 trillion of debt into the budget. If we don't have it in the bank, you don't get to spend it. I think these are pretty simple things that all Americans can agree on, regardless of party affiliation.
Well, Ericka, I've always said that pure politics starts on the porch. And talking about a balanced budget, I think that the first time we met, I spoke to you about this. Other than the government budget, aren't all other budgets balanced? Should there be any other type of budget than a balanced budget?
Yes and no. So by and large, I'm going to agree with that, although we just refinanced the mortgage on our house. So to me, like sometimes debt is okay, right? Sometimes debt is okay as long as the payments and interest are actually within range for what your budget is. And as long as we agree that that is worthwhile. Now, if we were taking out debt for the United States because, I don't know, something terrible happened, we had a war, and we got to rebuild a bunch of bridges or something. Okay, maybe we can take out some debt for that stuff. But when we see in the budget, $14 million for Congress to throw themselves parties at the Wilson Center, hundreds of thousands of dollars to discover if cocaine affects the promiscuity of carrier pigeons. Everyone should read Rand Paul's annual Festivus to see what nonsense your legislator is saying we should be taking out debt from countries that hate us to buy stuff we don't actually need.
Oh, it's scary hilarious. It's hilarious to read, but scary to see in our bills. There have been so many hilarious, laughable projects that were funded. The one that comes to mind was the effect of urine on alcoholic rats in New York State. What does that matter? You're cornering monopolies on the rat market, the alcohol market, and I guess the other market. But this is,
you know what it is? It's somebody needed to go get their doctorate thesis or some nonsense. So they make up some stupid test or project that they need to do that makes absolutely no sense. And then they get a grant for it because their senator promised some organization a bunch of money in order to trade for their money, power, and influence to get them elected.
And now that we have a tight economy and inflation is at a record high, are you hearing families having any palate for things like this, or are they fed up about things like this while they're struggling between putting fuel in their gas tank and food on their table?
Oh, yeah. I'm hearing from it across the state, and I'm hearing from it even from Democrats and progressives, if you can believe that. So in Vermont, it's winter. I mean, you need the heat 9 months out of the year. Okay. We've had a couple of warm days here, but it's only a high of 55 today. And it's October, and we're not going to get up past 55 until May next year. So when, 60%, I believe it is, of the homes in Vermont use either home heating oil or some kind of a, natural gas, propane, or something like that to heat their home. I mean, this is really hurting when they're paying upwards of $10 a gallon for home heating oil. I think my sister told me she filled up her tank this week to the tune of like $5,000 or something like that. And it normally costs her about $2,000. So these are real problems for people. I've got neighbors up the street here in Burlington who are telling me with all of the property tax increases and the inflation, they're having to choose between turning on their heat and putting food on their table. And that to me is just unconscionable. And all of this is avoidable. All of this can be fixed if it wasn't for the Biden administration shutting down America's ability to be energy independent. So that'll be another priority when I get to Washington as Vermont's next congresswoman. We need to reopen building the pipeline. We need to make sure that there are gas and oil leases being approved, that the other permits that they need to build the roads and other infrastructure to be able to utilize the permits, we need to get those approved and just get America working again.
Well, as an advocate and an ambassador of Veterans for America First, I'm hearing a lot of America First policies coming from you, and it's so refreshing. And it's also disheartening that someone in your race has seemingly hijacked the Republican moniker and even said that they're not going to caucus with the Republican Party. Now, when you're elected into the United States House of Representatives, do you plan on caucusing with the Republican Party?
Yes, sir. I will be. And as a matter of fact, what's really interesting, Jared, thinking about, so yes, I'm going to caucus with the Republicans, but you reminded me, you got a veterans podcast when you said that, right? We're talking about politics in general, but one of my opponents actually, this is what's so scary. One of my, Mr. Madden, was actually a Marine, and he almost got dishonorably discharged for protesting the wars. Now, he and I agree.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And so he and I agree that we should not be, funding proxy regime change wars. But the idea that he would dishonor his uniform in that way, I think is really troubling. And I think the fact that he lied and cheated to get to the position that he's in is really troubling. So as a military brat, both my husband's parents were in the Army. My dad was Air Force. Both my uncles were Marines. One grandfather was Air Force, one was Army. We come from a military family, and we have sacrificed for this country. And so to see a person dishonor the uniform in this way, I think is just so frustrating. And as Matt, did we already mention that he admitted to campaign finance fraud on the radio this morning?
On that yet, but yeah, please go
Yes.
ahead.
So this young man admitted on the radio. I don't think he understands what he said, but he actually admitted to campaign finance fraud on the radio this morning. I called my treasurer after listening, and I said, Liz, what, doesn't this sound wrong? And she cited a dozen different rules that he violated. So his wife gave money from her business account to family members to donate on his behalf, including his 2-year-old. So there's like 5 things right there that are illegal with that, and then he paid himself a salary. Yeah, I mean, I could just, it's a little complicated. We're still sorting it out, but this person admitted on the air that he cheated so that he would be included in the debates. So some of these debates, I actually have out fundraised him, but I was excluded for not having enough fundraising because 30 of his $40,000 was not really fundraised. It was, he cheated.
And it sounds like skirting around the rules doesn't seem to be transparent, integrity,
Yes.
and accountability. What you started off our discussion about today.
You are correct.
I normally don't ask candidates on a line item by line item, but I feel comfortable asking you.
Yeah.
Would you vote for automatic enrollment for active military to get VA benefits the moment they're discharged from the military?
Yes.
To prevent the lull between active duty and services?
Absolutely. 100%. This was one of the parts of the conversation. So I've had a couple of roundtable conversations with veterans at a organization called Josh's House here in Chittenden County. Josh Paletta committed suicide, and his family decided to start this organization. It's a place where veterans can go, hang out for the day, get food. There's a gym. There's you can sign up to get massages and acupuncture, and they help you register for benefits and all kinds of stuff. It's an amazing organization. So I've had a couple of roundtables there, one of which we got to shoot on my podcast on Generally Irritable. And one of the first things I said was, we're sending our boys and girls over to a war zone. And then I said, they're seeing awful things. This stuff is hard. Even if you're not directly in combat, you see things and you hear things and it's scary. I said, shouldn't we just assume that everyone coming back has a problem? Wouldn't it be better to assume everybody needs some help? And then as we discover they don't need it, we can just maybe remove the benefits, or they just don't get them.
Or at least evaluate. So it's a handshake from active military to being a productive member of society, coping with all the transition hurdles that they have.
Correct. Yes, I would 100% support that. And as a matter of fact, we're actually having a press conference this Saturday at our state house in Montpelier, 10:30 a.m. JT Dodge, who is running for state senate here in Vermont, is the main host. And there's another veterans home down in his part of the neck of the woods called the Dodge House. And that was named after his father, who also was a soldier who committed suicide. And his father was a strong member of the community and super active in helping with veterans. And even he took his own life. And so we just see that veteran suicide is a terrible tragedy and a problem that we need to address. Not to mention, addiction, depression, anxiety, all of the things that our veterans are dealing with that lead them either to drug abuse or suicide. So we've got a press conference this weekend to help address those issues and to continue to bring light where there is a need.
Well, Ericka, it is a pleasure hearing your refreshing voice and speaking up for the common sense platform issues that I think really touch every American family. We've been distracted with social issues from the left, trying to get emotions raised, while the fundamental issues of the economy, inflation, our day-to-day lives, helping out the meritorious veterans, looking out after our small towns, communities, and our way of life. It seems to be common sense that is being pushed from the left off the cliff while we're grasping hold of it. So how would someone be able to find out more information about your campaign and hopefully donate their time and, more importantly, make donations?
Awesome. Great question. So we've got the website, redicforcongress.com, REDIC for Congress.com. Let's see, there is a link to donate on WinRed. If you don't like donating online, there's an address at the bottom in the little footer of the website that has the mailing address. And right now is a great time to donate because we're getting ready for another big ad push on the radio and television next week. So we've got that. That's the website. There's also a connect page where you can sign up for the newsletter. You'll get a notification about what we've got going on and where we're going to be. You can also write an endorsement for me right on the webpage. So we've got a section called Republicans for Redic, and then just a straight endorsements page. So people can write their own endorsement. They can sign up for the newsletter. And there's also links to all my social media. So Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. I'm generally irritable. Well, I mean, that's the name of the podcast. Yes, exactly. I called it generally irritable because every time I talked about politics, I was generally irritable. So so they can check out.
I've said we're all caged and angry.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's enough's enough. So
yes, exactly. And then on Twitter, it's my name, Ericka Redic. So and everybody spells it wrong, even when I spell it for them. It's ERICKAREDIC. ERICKAREDIC on Twitter.
I'm going to put up all of your graphics at the end of this recording, so they won't have to worry about writing it down. So that hopefully won't have anybody misspelling any of the things, and that they don't miss where they're looking.
Awesome.
It is a pleasure speaking with you. I am refreshed. You say a lot of things that a lot of candidates don't say. At this stage, corporate endorsements, all these large organizations' endorsements are not as important as the endorsement of the individual voter. So you're doing the right thing. And
yes,
we
sir.
want you to, help you cross the line and get you to Washington, D.C. this year.
Thank you, sir. I so appreciate it, Jared. I really, I love what you're doing. Thank you for your efforts in highlighting candidates and policies around the country and helping awaken Americans who really need it right now.
She didn't say, maybe she's being a little modest here, but she's also an author. She gave me a autographed signed copy of her recent book. So if you'd like to look into that, it's a quick read.
It's a page turner.
It is a page turner. It is a quick read, and it really sings to how much you should trust the government. So
yes,
I'll leave everybody with a cliffhanger on that. And where would you go to buy that book?
Amazon.com. So if you go to Amazon.com, there's probably, I think there's a link on my website too. But Amazon.com, Reasons to Trust the Government by Ericka and Benjamin Redic.
Well, thank you for your time. I look forward to getting back with you, hopefully after the election, for a celebration interview.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Jared.
It's a pleasure.
And thank you to all your listeners. Bye.